is August 22nd, 1983. This is Joe Todd, an interview at Frederick Morris Lookout, Jr.
Jr.
Mr. Lookout, where were you born?
Harmony, Oklahoma, July the 30th, 1925.
Who is your father?
Frederick M. Lookout, Sr.
And who is your mother?
Mary.
What was her maiden name?
That's what I was trying to think. You know how that goes. It's been so many years ago. Wilson was her maiden name. Mary Wilson.
Were they both from Oklahoma?
They both were from Indian Territory.
Indian Territory. And what kind of work did your father do?
He was a rancher, farmer.
You know your grandfather, Fred Lookout?
Did I know him? Yes.
Can you describe your grandfather?
Could I describe my grandfather? Boy, that's a tall order. What do you mean? Characteristics or
What kind of personality?
attributes?
Oh, what kind of personality he had? What he looked like physically?
At what point in his... I'm sorry, at what point in his life? Did you mean in his prime or his old age or
in his prime.
In his prime? He was well over 6 foot. I would say well 200 pounds. Very stately, conservative, sort of reserved, dignified. He was whatever attributes or characteristics that you would apply to someone who has leadership capabilities. He was extremely a very spiritual individual. As I said, he was conservative in that he very rarely spoke. He was a good listener. And one of those types that whenever he spoke, you listened. I guess because of his past experiences, primarily in political circles. But back in those days, whenever these people assumed positions, they were not only our leaders politically, but they were our leaders religiously also, which is something that we don't enjoy today. We have a lot of leaders, but they don't have the respect that our leaders in the olden days did. I think primarily, and this is my opinion, attributable to their dual role in what I just spoke to, leaders politically and leaders spiritually.
Why was he the last hereditary chief of the Osage?
The last hereditary chief? I'm always somewhat reluctant to speak to this because there's a great deal of misunderstanding, primarily with the Osage tribesmen. But I have no reason not to. At this point, I think that most of those who might somewhat object or be concerned are long gone. But very briefly, and bear in mind, this is generally speaking, but the Osages were and still are divided into 2 divisions, the Hunka and the Tsijo division. And each one of them each division was comprised of subdivisions, and each of those divisions had clans, and the clans were named after various animals and sometimes objects that were made of nature or what they felt made the world go around. But each of these clans had a leader, and as a result, those leaders were called sub-chiefs. This is my interpretation. Bear in mind, I think there possibly might be some historical data that might be more specific, but for the benefit of our conversation, There were sub-chiefs, but at each one of these divisions there was a chief. But over all of the two divisions was the head man, the head guy. But the story goes that this individual who was the head man, and over all of them was the chief, lay dying. And he sent runners to look for a nephew because he had no sons. He had a lot of daughters but no sons, and no one who was rightfully claimed the hereditary chieftainship. Now this is when they were up in the St. Louis area, and possibly run back into the somewhere in the middle 1800s. But as the story goes, that the runners found the young nephew, and he made his trek back to wherever the chief lay dying. But when he got there, the old chief had died, and they were in this. He was in his ceremonial garb and in this little building. And as the nephew stood over him, paying his respects, as they do when people die, they have a certain ritual that they go through. The old chief raised up from the dead and made a statement that the great mystery, and I use that term because opposed to the Great Spirit, because I think the correct interpretation is not from, as our people, the Great Spirit. The correct, because the Great Spirit means a being at one time, and what we feel in our religious philosophies is that it was not. It's the great mystery allowed him to come back and do this one last act, because I don't think he felt that he couldn't be satisfactorily be received to the place beyond the sun until he had completed this ritual. He gave this nephew this hereditary, whatever it is, I don't know at this point. It's kind of eludes me. But nevertheless, what he gave him, then he laid back down and died, and that was it. And what he had given him is in the Smithsonian Institute. And we had the papers on it at one time, and not the paper, but a Xerox copy of some sort, of the parchment that gave him that right. That was it. There are others who will say, well, my grandfather was the last of the hereditary chiefs. But I'm not talking about sub-chiefs. I'm talking about the
How many clans are there?
This is in, gosh, I wouldn't have any idea.
What clan do you remember?
Eagle Clan.
Eagle Clan. Who's head of the Eagle Clan now?
I guess my aunt. I don't know. What you mean when you say who's head of it? There is no one who is really head of it. I think that possibly the elders are the ones who assume whatever responsibilities for each clan.
They said the clan had a sub-chief at one time.
Yes.
Is there a sub-chief now?
Well, that's a generalization that
Yeah,
I don't
okay.
think would hold true today, because sub-chiefs they're no longer recognized. In fact, chiefs are no longer recognized.
After Chief Lookout died, was Mr. Tinker the next chief?
No. The chiefs are elected. In fact, I'm opposed to the expression chief. It should be a chairman of the chairman.
Okay.
Chairman. Because chiefs today, and from the late 1800s or the early 1900s, at what time, have been elected through the democratic process.
Why are they elected now?
Why are they elected now? Why is the President of the United States elected?
But at one time it was hereditary.
Gosh, that's been a long time ago. That's been back in the 1860s, I guess.
When, when they stopped
When they
with the
stopped,
hereditary process.
when it began to be meaningless,
Yeah.
I suppose. There's not much point in carrying something on that is meaningless.
Right.
They have no authority, no role in our society today. And it appears that there's been so much controversy that everybody's a little afraid to say what I just spoke to you about earlier, that my grandfather's the last of the hereditary chiefs. And someone will say, that's not so,
At Little Rock Museum, they have in the Guide Center a creation story.
Pardon?
A creation story. Is that the Osage creation story about the cardinal? Have you seen it?
No, I don't know. I've possibly seen it, but I don't recall
Yeah.
what you're speaking to.
They talked about, I guess, the great mystery as opposed to the great spirit. And he was floating around in space, and he came to Earth, and I believe in the shape of a cardinal. But I'm not sure how he was transposed from the bird into human form. I don't know.
They might be speaking to. I have no idea what you're making reference to.
Okay. It may be a pan Indian. I'm not sure. I'm not that familiar with it. When did you start school?
When did I start school? In 1931.
1931. You're in Harmony?
Yes.
Which school did you start to?
Mullins.
Mullins? Is that the public school?
Public school. Right.
What kind of chores you do in the farm as a child?
Always a little reluctant to say. I always hear stories like this, and people say, "Oh my God, that's not true." I used to plow. Had that ring around my neck, little old kid plowing. And
How much did you plow in a day?
how much did I plow today?
Yeah.
Not very much. Just whatever they did. I just, it is a relief, primarily while someone got a drink of water. Took a little break. But we worked from sun up to sundown.
Just walk and plow?
Yeah, walking.
Horse or mule?
Both.
Both?
Yeah.
Did you have a horse and a mule?
Yes. Oh, no, not together.
Okay.
Just whoever was free, whichever one of them. We had what they call, I guess, a truck farm too. And we milked quite a few cows in the morning. Take the milk out, lay beside the roads, they dig it up. Pick potatoes and onions, cucumbers, and take them downtown and sell them.
What was your main crop?
Main crop? I don't think we really had a main crop. We just enough to take care of ourselves. Our biggest business was cattle and hogs. At that point, I don't know if you recall, you from Osage County?
Yeah.
Back in those days, the Texans used to ship their cattle up, and we'd raise them for whatever period of time. It varied a lot of times. And, man, that kept you busy.
Yeah, we live southwest of Bartlesville. Over where the old Levity School used to be.
Over down Okesa. They used to have them shipyard down there. We'd drive them cows back and forth down from there, wherever pasture we put them in.
How far did you have to drive the cattle?
Gosh, must have been, how far is it? Let's see. 4 or 5 miles. If it was that far.
How many head?
It did, I'd say it maybe wasn't that far.
Yeah.
It varied, 1,500 head.
You do your own butchering?
Back then, yeah.
You butcher cattle and hogs?
Did not so much cattle, more hogs than anything else. Yeah, we butchered cattle and hogs.
Okay, then did the women preserve the meat?
Yes.
Okay. What time of year would you butcher?
God, that's too far back for me to remember. I never really put a date on whenever we did. It wasn't cold, I know that. Yeah, back in those days, I think everybody had geese and guineas. Everybody had guineas.
They had, a lot of people said they had guineas and geese for watchdogs.
Yeah,
Anytime anyone came up, they made the racket.
they sure did. They
As
didn't make
watchdogs.
any animals.
Yep.
When you come up, they'd let you know it.
Mhm. What did downtown Harmony look to you as a child?
It looks about the same right now. Wasn't too much difference. They haven't made any improvements down there other than some of the old buildings.
Yeah.
They still stand.
Did you know Jack Drummond?
Yeah, I know that.
That's been,
One of the twins?
hmm?
One of the twins?
I'm not sure.
Jack and Gint. Jack and
Um,
Gint, the twins. We call them the Drummond twins.
Now that's just been given to the Historical Society, the Drummond House.
Mm-hmm.
What's your ideas on that?
You mean the house over there on North Price
Yeah.
was given to them, old Kate and Cecil?
Mm-hmm.
That's Kate and Cecil's house.
Yeah.
Well, we used to, see, I live right across the street from her.
Okay.
I live right across the street back this way.
Mm-hmm.
White House, I sold that to somebody, I forget. Yeah, boy, they raised that whole family there. I know, heck, I was said they'd all be parked there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge family.
How was the head right system established?
Gosh, that's been documented several times.
It has. Okay.
Yes, you should find that pretty easily. Around 1905, I think they took a census of 29 Indians recognized Osages.
When did you become interested in, or how did you become singer for the tribe?
I am not what you would say a singer for the tribe. I think at this point I'm the only recognized accomplished singer in the tribe, but I don't know, maybe it's just a matter of semantics. Every tribe has any number of singers. Any more, this is somewhat of a voluntary effort. But with our people, it's gotten to be more than a voluntary effort. I think it becomes more of a moral obligation. And you become so adapted to this obligation that you find yourself satisfying a lot of the tribal concerns. Let me try to summarize that up with the Osage people are divided into 3 districts at this point, in this day and time: the Gray Horse District, Pawhuska District, and the Hominy District. And each of these districts have what they call a Eloshka. That is at one time it was a social society that was made up of warriors who had exemplified themselves in combat or exemplified themselves in some manner that would entitle them to membership in this honorary society. But that society, the Eloshko, has been handed down through the years, through the centuries, in fact, that it still remains, and I in my opinion, is the only society of all of them that I have seen that is more closer to its form back in the early centuries today. But that Eloshka still continues today, and I refer to it as a ceremonial because it contains the last of our religion, and it's incorporated into that dance. Whereas in the past, it wasn't recognized as such. It was more of a social type organization. But as a group, this organization, as well as other organizations of the tribe at that time, had songs. Songs were an important part of the Indians' everyday life. Songs related to anything that they did, they sang, and usually danced, an expression of their will and an attempt to communicate with their higher power as they understood him. And the songs were, in essence, prayers, our way of communicating again with our higher power. But always there was someone there who was skilled in that particular organization with those specific songs that were relegated for that purpose. And that individual was known as a hoka, H-O-G-A, H-O-G-A, I suppose, would be the closest way that I can. But this particular organization, the Eloshka, has hoka. And these are people such as me who are familiar with these specific songs. And there are hundreds and hundreds of songs that go into this Eloshka. And a lot of them were made to have tell a story. Mm-hmm. I would say maybe 50% of them, or maybe 65, tell of an experience by one of the membership, and speak their names. But those songs belong to this Eloshka. Those songs, in the majority of them, I know them from memory. I never really regarded this as being any sort of phenomena until just only about 10 years ago, whenever someone asked me, says, how many songs you know? I thought maybe 500. And they would look aghast and, like, why? You don't know that many songs. But I do. But in each one of these separate Eloshkas that I just outlined to you, there are families that have songs made for them or have been passed down through the centuries or generations, and they sing them on Sunday. And each one of these drums, there's approximately 27 or 26 songs, to the best of my memory, of each one of the Grey Horse District Ahome, and making a total of around close to 75 songs that belong to Osages. There's more than that. I would say way over 100, but they don't sing them. These songs I have in my memory. And oftentimes whenever these people are somewhere out and the conditions are just right, and I won't speak to the conditions at this point, but like we're out at a social gathering and somebody will say, I want you to sing my song. Then I have to reach up in my memory and pull that song down and sing it for them. And in all probability, it'll have some honorary terms in it, but more so, it will have their Indian name in it. So, not only knowing the songs and the story behind the songs, I have to know their Indian name. And, but I've been rather candid, I suppose. I have my PhD in this area be trying, of course. But seriously, it takes years and years of work and practice. Not only, I just don't feel like anybody can do it. Somebody says, well, who are you going to hand this down to? Well, we're going to hand it to, who did Bing Crosby hand his voice down to? Or Perry Como, or, these guys. Who are they going to hand? I've got no one that I can hand this down to, because you got to have a voice, and you got to be so dedicated. Not only that, you got to know the language. And today, these people don't know the language. And it's most unfortunate.
How many speakers are left?
Gosh.
Are you a speaker?
No, I don't. I'm no speaker. I couldn't speak well enough. And so if you talk in Indian, who's going to understand you?
Yeah.
Isn't that much point, is it? I fear that it's lost. And I feel that whenever people like myself and some of the others in my age bracket, and there's not too many in my age bracket, and we all go, and
have you ever thought of recording these songs?
I have recorded a number of them, but you can go to the Smithsonian and find all sorts of recordings.
Mm-hmm. Are there translations also?
What's the point if who's going to learn them and for what reason?
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know, it's probably like going away and learning some ancient tongue. For what purpose? Why don't you go and learn Spanish or French or something that'll be beneficial to you? Just knowing something that...
Yeah. So are all 500 songs that you know recorded in the Smithsonian, you think?
No, I wouldn't say they are. There are a lot of the older songs that I recorded there, but these songs that I know have been recorded by various individuals in the past. And
what's the basis of the Osage religion?
what's the basis for it?
Is that a good question? I don't know.
Well, that's a broad question. Could you be more specific?
You said that originally you had a social gathering that's now part of the religion.
The old religion, if you want to call it as such, is incorporated into this Eloshka that we have perpetuated.
Now this is the great mystery.
Yeah. Well, that's God as we as I understand Him, and I'll be more specific, as I understand Him, because I think that our religion is very few Osages who really can interpret it or understand it, because it's no longer practiced. They're all Christians.
What? I don't know how do they practice a religion? Or do they have a certain ceremony?
Christianity?
I know it's not a good question.
Yeah. I heard someone question my aunt at one time as to, did you have churches when you were a child? She says no. And of course they didn't have any churches when you heathens, you barbarians. Well, with the Indians, and they didn't have any need for churches, because the religion was so incorporated into their lifestyle that it was practiced from the time that they got up to the time they went to bed. When they arose in the morning, they lined up abreast and watched the sun come up, and then they would pray. And more, they had a way of mourning, a song that they mourned, and it was a prayer song. And they would awake in the morning, and at night, the setting sun, that when it would set, well, they would line up the same way, and they would pray in that same mourning, wailing. What is his name? Washington Irving. He said in his one of his books that the Osages were the most religious people. a lot of other things, but there's been a number of historians that have said they were religious, but everything that they did was they asked their higher power for permission, or everything that they did. There was a song and it was a prayer. Everything that you did. So, you know, if you live that kind of life, well, would you have to have a church to remind you every Sunday and set aside one day? Every day was set aside for.
Your aunt, Mrs. Standing Bear, talked about the dances and the drum and the keep of the drum.
Mm-hmm.
The drum you had up on Lookout Mountain, is that the drum that she's talking about?
No, that drum that she's speaking to is really a sacred drum, and it doesn't go out unless it is being used, anything related to that Elon skit that I spoke to.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only time that it's brought out.
She also mentioned that while they're dancing, they don't look over the drum.
There's a lot of things that they do not do, and one of them is not to look over the drum.
What else don't they do?
You never turn your back on the drum. The drum is regarded as a being, and we call it grandfather. And through it contains the so-called thunder and lightning, and we strike it, and the thunder or the tone goes up into the universe, and we communicate with our higher power. It's our means of communicating with I don't think there's when you I know that a lot of this may sound rather primitive, but when you really get down to it, I don't think that there's that much difference in drawing an analogy from church as I understand it today in Christianity. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that we're always somewhat concerned to me, and I'll be brief on this, is the ghost dance. The ghost dance came about when the Indians were really in desperate need.
And the guy's name.
Oh boy, I guess 10, 12 years old.
Or they dance 4 days.
Why would they dance 4 days? I really don't know. But our Elos can last 4 days.
It does.
Today.
Is it open to the public or strictly for?
It's open to the public. They don't encourage tourists.
Mm-hmm.
The dance is only for the participants.
Okay, but you keep people away from it.
No one is.
But you don't encourage people.
We don't encourage people to attend. I find that there's always a large crowd of observers and not very many tourists.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a tourist attraction. I think if they turned it into a tourist attraction, they would get rid of me because I wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm. Like if I came up as an observer, would I be welcome or would I?
Yeah, you'd be welcome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we haven't covered. Do the Osages still have sacred rites?
No, they're all gone.
They're all gone.
All gone. We were told not to speak of them. And what you've heard is very limited when I spoke to you about the rites.
Mm-hmm.
LaFleche made quite a accumulation of information, and he speaks to it very lightly of those who revealed the rites, the Osages. But what has been told to me and what LaFleche speaks to, as I said, doesn't place much emphasis on that these people died violent deaths. And they feel that once you reveal something, a sacred trust, then you've broken that trust. And something violent will happen to you. And this is what happened to these people. So what our elders say held a great truth. And as a result, even when it's mentioned, some of our elders who are all passed on by now have said, and my aunt, by the way, is another one who says, "No, don't talk about it." But I've spoken to you in a broad sense, in that it was a basis for our religion, and because of the death of those that made up the membership, which represented various portions of the universe and the earth, they're gone and they can't be replaced. So, but they in effect, and I don't know how to draw this analogy, that they together as a group representation of the portion of the earth's surface and the universe no longer exists. And in effect, we say that the universe, parts of the universe and the earth don't exist, and it's fragmented, and it just all fell apart. Which is inevitably what's going to happen to us if we continue the way we are. We're hell-bent on destroying it.
So all the sacred rites now are gone?
They're gone. They're all gone.
I don't know if I should ask this or not, but do people like your aunt, do they have the knowledge of the rites? Do they remember them? And just don't talk about them, or?
That's right. Oh, I think there are certain ones who know about it, but they won't tell you anything about it.
So when they're gone, it's gone forever?
That's it. That's it.
What were the sacred bundles used for?
That's one of the rites. That's
one of the rites.
Yeah. That was a rite. My Uncle Charlie, my oldest uncle, was a member of that group. But they held various parts of animals and mussel shell or whatever sacred objects. But I use that term loosely because when I was speaking of a bird here the other day, and someone said that the scissortail was a sacred bird of the Osages, and all birds were sacred. All animals were sacred. Everything that we think was sacred, but there were certain objects that had more of a meaning. It's kind of like, use an example, red paint. I overheard a school teacher tell the children that red paint was put on people to protect them from bullets and arrows. And that was a protection. That was, Indians felt that they put that red paint on that they couldn't be harmed. Red paint signified infinity. Death is transitory. You just move from one life into another. So you don't fear death. And that's what was it, Crazy Horse? Or who said, it's a good day to die. Right. And they said he's a fatalist. Well, hell, he's a realist. Let's make today, a good day. If it's I die, well, it's transitory. And that's what Christians say. Life is infinite. That's what red means. But all these objects had some meaning to that warrior. And a skin of an otter, or the skin of a crow, whatever he needed to make up for whatever he was about to do would be in that bundle. and they kept that bundle and would add to it. And
Was
they
that
would go,
buried
there
with
was a
them?
ceremony and rite that they would go to.
Was that buried with them when they died?
No, no, it was,
I'm asking for a specific reason.
well, I've never been asked. I don't mind speaking. You go out here and find me dead, well, you know what happened.
Because there's a sacred bundle, there's an Osage sacred bundle in the
Yeah.
Historical Society.
Um,
Have no idea who it belonged to.
they got away from us because people become afraid of them. And this all came about when Christianity started coming in and the peyote movement. The peyote movement said, everybody, you forget all these rights. Everything goes. And so they started shucking everything. There were some people who were wound up with several bundles. And some of them were given to various museums, and Philbrook got one.
But
And
this
I'm
is
sure
purchased from T.R. Roddy.
Yeah, well, they're around the country, but the Indians got rid of them because they were told to get rid of them. And the lady here at Philbrook, they opened her, and she wound up in a wheelchair, and for no reason. They
That's
couldn't
why
figure it out. They went to my people and asked that they tried to make that right. By that's a term meaning that they wanted my uncle to perform some sort of ceremony that would hopefully relieve her of this curse or whatever you choose to call it. And they told her what to do. And I don't know what the outcome was. That hasn't been very long ago. I think she's still around here someplace. But they called one of the medicine men in, and he tried to take care of it.
Well, we took that one off display
Mm.
with my insistence, and they told me to put it in the storeroom. And I had second thoughts about touching it, so I put it in the storeroom, and it's still there as far as I know. And I
Well,
wouldn't-
that's what they did here. No, these Osages wouldn't go down there. And I know it's there, and I just tell my children to stay away from it.
Yeah. But as long as, of course, I'm not. Well, I think we have a good interview. Is there anything else you want to discuss, talk about?
No, nothing I can think of. That's without going into a lot of detail. You
Yeah.
talk about that ELO sheet, you can talk several hours. The structure of it, the
Mhm.
meaning behind it.
Would you be willing to discuss that?
Oh, I have no qualms about it. In fact, I was hopeful that I might at some point, if I should retire and when, that I might develop a set of bylaws to speak of, identifying the responsibilities of each member of the ELOSC itself.
Well, if I could, I'd like to come back at some time at your convenience again and do another interview about the election.
Yeah.
If we could.
That's a good one. Gary Bailey's a good friend of mine over here, and he did a paper on the ELOSC. I've always asked him where we won't give it to him. He's always, gosh, I forgot it. But anyway, I wanted to get that, and there was a young lady who worked on her doctorate. And we visited over a 3-year period at various intervals, but hers is completely far removed from what I have in mind, because these people need some sort of guide.
Yeah.
And I think I could do it in about a year, probably. But I'd really like to do that.
Because, we'll give you a copy of the tapes. And then if we could do an interview on the election, we would give you a copy of that. That would be a good basis
Mhm.
for it. The Osage language, is it written?
Mm-hmm.
How many letters in the alphabet?
Gosh, I don't even know if it's written as such. There is a book of the Osage language. LaFleche put it together.
Mhm.
I can't. It's difficult for me.
Do you know a good speaker?
No, my aunt.
I don't know.
Let's see. Though there are a few elders in Fairfax, but they're women. There are no elderly men. Ed Redgold speaks Osage, but it's I would, it's not what I would call fluent. It just, no, I sure don't. Just my aunt's about the only one that I can think of
Okay.
just off the top of my head. But bear in mind that the men and women speak different dialects.
I didn't know.
Yeah, yeah, women have a dialect all their own. The men have it.
Is the Osage a matrilineal or patrilineal society?
What now?
Patrilineal, or is it based on the father's side or the mother's side of the family?
Well, supposedly the patriarch. Because when there was ever a marriage, which was made, the marriages were one of the divisions that I spoke to earlier. With the group, primarily the parents, would select the mate from the other division, and when even though the man would sometimes move into the women's the the bride's household,
Mhm.
they would choose his clan as their clan.
That could be a conflict.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Wouldn't take very long.
Yeah,
It's all these other little side things,
yeah, right.
and they could go on and on and on. You know, for instance, well, what happens when the drumkeeper dies? You know, who would ever think of that?
What does Eloshka mean, the word?
Osage's interpretation of it is the playground of the first son. Playground of the first son. That's the way they interpret it.
Okay.